Okay, I think, are we recording? I see a little red dot, I think, yes. Okay. Is it on? All right, so welcome everybody. This is the Accelerating Innovation to Market grant info session. The program website, for those who haven't visited yet, it is innovation.ucsd.edu, nice and easy, /AIM. So there you will find information about the scope, timeline, and a big orange button right in the middle of the screen that says apply, which takes you to it's the university's kind of one of many portals for accepting grants. And so actually, if you're there at InfoReady, you can explore, because there's a lot of other grant opportunities. There are teaching grants, development and workforce opportunities as well. So I urge everybody to consider and explore that. So quick overview of the agenda. I'm going to essentially run down these things with our slides. So a bit of our version of an ecosystem map in terms of stages of development for the different projects and companies that are being developed and spun out of UCSD. What is AIM and how does it work? I'm going to introduce our panelists, so which I'm going to throw it over to them, then the focus of today is IP strategy insights and then some industry insights. So what does the commercialization pull look like in terms of, what are the most appealing programs and what's going to be your best foot forward in terms of what you submit. A bit of info about the timeline. So where are we now up through closing and what kind of timing until grants and awards are actually made, and then some open Q&A. At the Office of Innovation and Commercialization, we have had many meetings and conversations with our partners across campus. So it's just different incubators and accelerators, partners in the divisions and departments, from engineering to SIO to health and medicine. And we've all worked pretty hard and tried to get some agreement in terms of what are the different stages that we're seeing projects and companies go through most typically on our campus. And so with this, it's idea, exploration, validation, launch, and then growth. And so AIM today is really most focused on projects and startups that are in this idea phase. So this is proof of concept funding. And I've got a panelist that needs some help. Actually, Tammy and Rachel, could you send the access information to Ravi one more time, please? And so let's get myself back on track here. So AIM is originally a proof of concept grant funding program. There are no IP obligations. So the university is not taking additional ownership of anything that you're proposing through this process. However, one of the requirements is that there is UCSD disclosed intellectual property as a part of what you are submitting. So it doesn't have to be solely UCSD IP. It can be a mix of something, if you've got partners at another university or an external or partner institution, but that needs to be a core part of what we are providing award grants to. So, how much is available and how much can each of you apply for? You can apply for multiple projects, so you don't only have to apply for one. The pool of money this year is between 225 and 250,000. I will lean much more towards the top end of that, and the grants that we award are between 10,000 and 50,000. So that can range, of course, on your budget and the demonstrated needs of each of your projects. However, we typically see that we see a wide range there. And so really it's most importantly about the demonstrated need and not, just fill personal, or rather personnel funding gaps. So we really want to see how the impact of the funding is going to help get to the next meaningful milestone or inflection point. So this then I am going to throw over to our panelists. I know Ravi is about to join, so Ken, would you start us off? Oh, Ravi's here as well. Okay, Well, Ravi, would you like to start and then throw it over to Ken?
So just general introduction.
Yes. Who are you and what do you do?
Thanks, Shane. Great to be here. My name is Ravi Kiron. I'm part of the Silicon Valley Innovation Hub of EMD Serono. That's Merck KGaA, Darmstadt, Germany. We opened this Silicon Valley Innovation Hub about 4 years ago with the express intent of connecting with the California biotech environment and really encouraging novel ideas, generation, and investment in those ideas. So being closely associated with Paul Robin and Shane and others at UCSD for a number of years. We have multiple collaborations with not only with professors at UCSD, but also with other student advisors and staffs, including investors like Justin. So we've had a number of discussions there as well. My own background, I've been in the industry, I've been at Pfizer, J&J, number of biotechs, and now here at EMD. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Ken Jenkins. I'm a patent attorney here at Mintz Levin, which is a national law firm, and I practice in the life sciences area. Work with inventors in research institutions and in the private sector, and I do work also with UCSD. I practiced since about 2002 and practiced in sort of all areas of the life sciences, small molecules to antibodies to diagnostic sequencing. I think that I also serve I have served as an evaluator with Ames and also served on the Dean's Leadership Council at the Division of Biological Sciences at UCSD.
Hi everyone, I'm Raksha Shah, and I have 25 plus years experience in leadership positions in big pharma companies like GSK and Novartis. And for the last few years, I've been a serial entrepreneur, starting biotech companies, and I've also run a software company. I'm currently the COO of founder and COO of Lipidio Pharmaceuticals based in San Diego, where we're developing an asset for both metabolic and dermatology indications. And I've also been an EIR for UCSD, where I've mentored early stage companies coming out of UCSD. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Chapman. I work with Deerfield Management, a healthcare investment firm located in New York City. Deerfield has a large collaboration with UCSD called Poseidon Innovation. Poseidon's focus and role is to fund early stage therapeutic investment in collaboration with investigators at UCSD. My background is drug discovery. I spent many years in large pharma, as well as in San Diego biotech and venture capital investment.
Excellent. And just want to say thank you so much, both from myself and from OIC, but then also from campus, for each of you sharing your time, expertise, and insight with us today. So I had some questions that I prepared as a way to kind of move us through. And so I've attached each of these to your names, kind of just based on your experience. However, I invite you to share insight from any of them. So if Raksha has some insight about compelling parts of proof of concept, then please chime in. Each of you has had experience or a role with AIM in some way or form. So, all of your experience is really valuable. So, Ravi, would you like to kick it off or tackle one of the questions?
Sure. I think I guess the participants are a lot of entrepreneurs and idea generators and people who have exciting new approaches to curing the diseases or identifying new medical devices or things like that. And I think what Shane has really nicely put together in these slides is you go all the way from idea generation to developing the company through the various embodiments of that science that goes through bringing in IP, bringing in management, bringing in financial means to execute on that idea and realize the dream that you had initially. One thing that's really, really important is to keep in mind that ideas sometimes morph over time. And so if you have an idea and you want to build on it, you want to develop it, it's good to talk to industry, talk to companies who have an interest in these things. And of course, you have to protect yourself. That's where companies like Mintz and others will help you go through that in terms of IP generation or protecting your IP. But more often than not, I would say I've been in 3 big pharmas, and I can tell you, at least with those that I've been there, pharma is not interested to come in and steal your idea and take it away from you. They want to work with you. They want to help you develop it because you're the scientific founder, you are the idea generator. So it doesn't really help for big pharma to come in and steal your idea and take it away and do something with it there. They always want to develop it with you. So don't be too scared or concerned about that, but engage in a dialogue, engage in a discussion, go through your tech transfer office, and be realistic and be honest and upfront about what the idea is. And many times, like I've been in a number of situations where companies reach out to us and they say, hey, here is an idea, this is what we want to do. But through dialogue and discussion, the idea actually morphed into something else, and the company was extremely successful with rather than coming with a platform and then wanting to give it as an exclusive license to a single company. We said, why don't you go and do it as a non-exclusive license and sell it to 20 different companies? You'll actually make more money there. And plus, technology being what it is, it morphs and grows and develops so quickly. So you don't want to be stuck with something that's out of date 2 minutes after you already made it. So what I would say is come and talk to us. I know big organizations is always a problem because there's too many people, you don't know, you send your ideas and nobody responds to you. And yes, that is a challenge because when you get so many things, but I'd say keep the course and keep in touch, keep the dialogue open. I would have said, I'll meet you at Bio or JPM, but I don't know if that's going to happen. We may not meet in person, but I would say just, develop the idea, develop your network. That's the key. So if Shane calls me and says, Ravi, I think this is a great idea, I know XYZ, then I'll say, oh, really? Okay, because I know Shane really well. So, so in that way, it would really help. So those are some general comments, but idea generation is a very difficult task, and I would say keep at it, and there's a lot of opportunity out there.
I know, Raksha, you've got to go like as soon as it was. I'd love to provide some space and time before you go if there's something you want to address in your questions or in one of the other bullets there.
Raksha, you're on mute.
Sorry about
Sorry.
that. Yeah, thank
Yep.
you, Shane. The nugget I'd like to share with everyone before I have to jump off, unfortunately, is having sat on AIMS panels before, know what the amount of the grant is, and if it's $50,000, even if your research project or technology requires a lot more than that, please come prepared with a slide that has a milestone that you can achieve for the grant amount, right? And with a budget that lists out what you want to get done in order to achieve the milestone that you want to achieve for the $50,000 grant. Something as simple as that is often missed because researchers are so excited about sharing information about their project, which we're excited to hear about. But it's really important when we're trying to figure out who to award a grant to understand from the researcher's perspective what can be achieved on their technology to move it forward for that $50,000. So please always have a slide that really lists out a budget and timeline and a milestone that's achievable for that $50,000. Even if you know and you can lay out what the entire technology may need down the road, but do give the panelists what you can achieve for that $50,000. I think that really helps a lot. So thank you.
So Ken and Justin, I'll throw it over to you two. You know, and there's going to be some additional slides here that gets more into the IP and industry side of things. But before we move on, just wanted to have you two take a chance and share some insights.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I'll jump in ahead of you, Justin, if you don't mind. So with regard to IP, as Shane mentioned, as part of the AIM proposal, you'll be providing an IP status, and you will have disclosed the invention to UCST tech transfer, hopefully. And with regard to the IP status, you want to make sure that you understand what type of IP has been filed, whether that's a preliminary provisional application or perhaps it's at the PCT international application stage, or perhaps you have a pending regular US application. But you're going to want to understand sort of what the status is of your IP if you have filed IP. If the IP has not been filed yet, the most important thing from my perspective is to make sure you don't publicly disclose the invention before UCSD has a chance to file a patent application on it. And this is sort of, I believe, what is sort of the most common sort of error from inventors. And public disclosures include, of course, published manuscripts, also public presentations, including poster presentations, oral presentations at symposia. Some grant proposals can be made public. And so you really want to be careful whenever you're disclosing the invention to any entity where you think it might become public. And if you have questions on that, the Tech Transfer Office can help you answer those questions. I think also, not only do we want to try to file before there's any public disclosure, oftentimes we want to try to file before you start talking with potential partners in detail about the invention, not because we think that the partners are going to steal it. I think Ravi is absolutely right. I don't think partners are out to steal. But a lot of times you're talking with very sophisticated scientists at some of these entities, and they may have some very good ideas for improvements on your invention, and they can end up being a co-inventor. And that's sort of another point I want to raise. It's very, very easy for any other scientists that you talk with it's very easy if you're talking with them about your invention. It's very easy for them to become an inventor, even if they don't intend to become an inventor. They could provide you with additional ideas, additional wrinkles to your invention that may end up in the patent application, and they may end up as a co-inventor. So you just want to be aware of that whenever you're talking, even in private, in a sort of a non-public space with any colleagues or potential partners. The other thing I would say is, with regard to sort of the AIM proposals, is that, you know, sometimes questions come up as to sort of the novelty and inventiveness of the invention, and those questions are typically sort of directed toward the IP. If your invention is, say, a combination of previously known elements, the question may come up of, you know, has anyone done, you know, employed a similar strategy previously? And, you know, if so, you know, what is the difference between what you're doing and what the previous strategy was? And, you know, is there some sort of concrete advantage to your approach? And so before you know, sort of get into sort of that dialogue at the stage of sort of the Q&A through the AIM process, you may want to, or I'd recommend at least doing some searches on PubMed and maybe even the USPTO website to get an idea of what else is out there that might be similar, so you can you know, speak intelligently about the differences between what you're doing and what others have done in the past. I think I'll just hold it there. I'm a lawyer, so I can go on for hours, but I'll stop there and hand it over to Justin.
All right, and I've got just probably a few quick comments. I mean, I think the others have covered some of the key things, and I will echo again what Ravi said. Contrary to popular belief, investors are not out to screw people. I've experienced this again and again, that some of these discussions have ended up feeling confrontational, and they're absolutely never meant to be, just in general from high level. You know, investors are looking to work with great people, and it's, you know, in general, this is a relationship business, and developing and fostering those relationships is a huge and important part. And, you know, I don't want Ken to get mad at me, say to talk to people, because certainly protecting your IP is always important, and being careful, particularly around disclosure. In terms of some of the bullet points that are here, you know, one of the things that I see a lot when people are pitching ideas to me is, in terms of a slide deck, things get very, very much into the details and the weeds. Presentation should be kept, you know, I love science, and I'd love to talk about science all day, but things need to be really focused on overall vision, strategy. What are the key aspects that differentiate you from what others are doing? Why is this important? But really focused on those key messages, and being careful not to really get in the weeds in terms of, you know, what is exciting science. But, you know, for a pitch, it needs to be very, very focused on what the ultimate goals are and what the value proposition really is. And I think I'll stop there.
Yeah, if I can just add to what Justin just mentioned, the high-level overview of your program is very, very important, because just keep in mind that all the people listening to you may not have the same kind of knowledge you have about this science. I may have a PhD, but I don't know everything that's there in science. I may have no clue about so many therapeutic areas or what's research happening there. And if you go too detailed, then you start to lose people. And so if you keep it high level, like Justin said, strategy, outcomes, what can be achieved, and what can be accomplished, and what are the problems you think that you will face in the time, and how you plan to go about addressing it. And then also competition, like Justin said also, who's doing what and what are the challenges there and how you are better than anybody else. Just 7, 8 slides, that's all you need.
Wise words, and I think really great advice across the board. So thank you all. It is a relationships business, and part of it is even matchmaking. You know, that you've all also got to like each other when it comes down to it. So a bit of added spice to life. So next is a more focused look at intellectual property strategy. I just want to make the note here that there are a few folks from our office who are attending from our licensing team. So if you haven't engaged with our office, it starts with a disclosure, and that is at the standard HTTPS. But if you type in edisclosure.ucsd.edu, it's an online form that creates a case number. You share details, you can submit drawings and additional information about what your proposed invention is. And that will then get assigned to one of the licensing, very talented and wise licensing team, who then can talk you through potential next steps. And so that's only, like I mentioned, the beginning to an inventor's experience at UCSD, but that we do it with key partners in the ecosystem, both regionally and nationally, internationally, with partners like Mintz. So Ken, I'll hand it back to you if you want to go into more detail about any specific, I guess, criteria or services or ways that you've previously engaged with UCSD's inventors. Is kind of that opportunity.
Yeah, and typically, you know, engagement is through the licensing officers and through the tech transfer office. They reach out to us, and the first thing that they send us is that invention disclosure form. If there's a manuscript, that's even better. But you know, that invention disclosure form, you know, has, you know, quite a few questions on it, and you know, of course, there's a description of the invention and where you are and how far you've gotten in terms of the lab results. But another question on that disclosure form is, you know, are you aware of sort of any, you know, similar public disclosures of similar technologies? And that's a really important question from my perspective, because when I'm trying to figure out, you know, what our legal invention is, it's always relative to what's been done before. And so once I get that invention disclosure, I review it, and typically, you know, I'll give you a call and we'll talk about those things. You know, and the conversation is typically in 2 parts. The first part is me understanding the science and making sure I'm educated on sort of the details of it. And the second part is, you know, what's known out there that may be similar that I should know about, so that when the examiners assert that it's not inventive, which examiners almost always do, that we're prepared to sort of answer those concerns, and we're drafting the patent application with those previous publications in mind.
And then from Ravi and Justin's experience, I don't think either of you work specifically within the patent process, but is there anything you'd want to share, I guess, when it comes to the licensing experience from the industry side, or you know, I guess the discovery, you know, how would you access new researcher programs through AIM, and what would happen, say, if you found the next amazing project to engage with?
Justin, you want to go? I think Ken has really outlined the way that you have to protect yourself. Definitely, you want to make sure that you know, you look at what the rules and regulations are, how IP is supported, generated, and I think the key is here in trying to generate a new idea to not get too bogged down into the weeds. If you go a little more high level, you do a prior art search, there's a lot of free resources available out there. I think that'll make Ken's job much more easier. If you do a competitive analysis search, then he can probably very quickly tell you whether this is protectable or not. And I think that might be the beginning for any kind of discussion, because ultimately you don't want to go down the path of investing a huge amount of time and effort only to find out that somebody's already claimed that kind of an IP, in which case you got to go back to the drawing board. Granted, of course, that there's 18 months when you apply for a PCT and it's going through the process of review and acceptance, that you don't know what somebody has already applied for, but that's part of the process. I mean, you can't do anything about that, but at least from a industry perspective, that's what I see.
Yeah,
Justin?
I would just point in a little bit. That's exactly right, Ravi. And this it can be a back and forth in terms of sort of excavating what is your legal invention, which may be a little bit different than what you came in with, thinking about what your scientific invention is, because there may be some prior art that may shape or push our legal invention in a slightly different direction.
One thing I'd like to add, and this is a little bit further down the road from initially generating intellectual property in a strategy there, but when you are beginning to reach out and talk to potential partners or investors, it's really important to keep in mind what constitutes confidential information and confidential discussions versus non-confidential. And what I see is, from an investment perspective, again and again, is going through the process and the hurdles of getting a confidentiality agreement in place to have discussions, and then finding that those discussions are really focused on what is published data. Let's have a confidential discussion, and then the confidential discussion is a publication that's out in the public domain. There are risks to having a two-way confidentiality agreement in place. And so if there is not true confidential information to be shared, it is better to have a non-confidential discussion than to go under a confidentiality agreement. And Ken, you probably have more thoughts or experience.
Well, I think, yeah, and that's a really good point, Justin. But I think that most investors are really loath to sign a confidentiality agreement, just because of the risk that you mentioned, Justin. It kind of puts them on a potential hook. They talk to a lot of different potential inventors and potential companies, and there's a lot of overlapping technologies, and they may be accused down the line of stealing an idea that they did not steal, that it really came from another source, but it may appear to the original inventor that it was stolen, which it's not. And so that happens, or has happened a lot. And so, I think certainly for at least the initial conversations, it would be really best if you're able to sort of have a non-confidential discussion. If confidential information, if there's a lot of interest and it's necessary to talk about confidential information at that step, maybe you can start talking about a confidentiality agreement, a CDA. But as Justin said, at UCSD, a lot of times there already is a published manuscript. You file the provisional application, and then some months later there's a published manuscript, and once it's published, it is no longer confidential, and you're free to sort of go through that in a lot of scientific detail.
So I think beyond then the IP strategy and how to kind of get things started, then it's where do things go next? And so AIM is one, say, meaningful, albeit small, gap funding opportunity, but that industry partners and so Justin and Ravi, you both are part of organizations that provide research grants and resources that can help further advance science. And so I pulled, just to share here, Ravi, I'm going to throw it over to you. There was a recently closed grant round, and it had a series of thematic areas with grant amounts over the amount of time. And this is, again, to encourage this cross-pollination and engagement with the idea generators and industry and commercializing entities. So Ravi, I'll throw it over to you if you want to highlight. I know that UCSD has received, I think, a different type of award in the past, but we've had submissions to these different grant cycles each year. Is there something that you'd like to add around kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for highlighting this one. So the deadline for submission of this application round was August 31st. So, and it's amazing. I think we've received over, I think it's like 1,200 applications or so. So it's a large number across all these areas from all over the world. So it's not just US alone or Germany alone. So this is from all over the world. And I mean, there's a lot of really exciting quality ideas that have come through, and now we're in the process of going through them. So this is going to be offered every year now. Merck KGA, that's of course based in Germany, is instituting this with the MDs Serono, which is a subsidiary of Merck KGA. So we will grant these kinds of awards every year. And some of these areas might change slightly. So this time there's a huge focus on sustainability and organoids. I think last year we had something on microbiome. And prior to that, we also had something on pandemic preparedness. So some of these criteria and areas might change, but there is a lot of interest within the organization to support early innovation. And I think one of the questions that somebody had was, how early does industry go to collaborate? And this is as early as even sometimes I've been involved in collaborations where it's just a professor and a postdoc. That's all. They had an idea and they were trying to develop it, and we went in and collaborated with them, helped them develop the idea, develop the technology, and established a collaboration. So it can be as early as that. This grant funding cycle is now in the process of evaluation, but we have other things like Innovation Cup. We have the Curious conference where the Nobel laureates come and talk about the science and stuff like that, basically to enhance science and technology and connect with academics and the biotech industry and other partners.
And so that is an example of grants that are being, I guess, as a pull to pull science and relationships and scientists out of the university and to connect with industry. Justin, your role is, I think, in a way, switched, where you've got Deerfield and Poseidon that are peering into the university with a committed pool of funding, where then you are going out and kind of, I guess, shaking through the bushes of the different departments and divisions, looking for a very specific set of projects to engage with as potential new portfolio add-ons to that. So do you want to share, I guess, insight around that effort, or kind of what is Poseidon up to most recently?
Yeah, I'd love to, Shane. Thanks. So the Poseidon funding mechanism, is really focused on very specific therapeutic generation. The ultimate goal of the funding through Poseidon is to generate an IND. I mean, that's really the deliverable that is being focused on. So it's a relatively, compared to what you're seeing here from Ravi, it's a very narrow and focused mechanism. From my perspective, and part of this is just because I've been doing this for a long time, and have been in particularly the San Diego area for probably too many years to count. I'm also involved with some other funding groups that are looking at a little bit broader areas of focus, including, some earlier research platform types of plays. So we're in really a nice time right now. There is a lot of investment, a lot of money coming in terms of investment opportunities, much more so than there had been, even say 5 years ago, particularly venture groups reaching into some of these earlier stage research opportunities that are being pursued. So I do think it's an opportune time right now. And although, like I said, Poseidon is relatively narrow in focus, there are a lot of additional opportunities that are around. And and I know the same is for Ravi. We're, part of our interest is, if it's not a good fit for me, I'm still looking and interested in facilitating opportunities for others.
So getting back into, I guess, not the weeds, but into the core services of both OIC and then Ken's kind of forte and expertise, that licensing is also a key part of what our office does. And so then at the very bottom here, I have some typically, and so there's actually an FAQ on our website. So it's innovation.ucsc.edu. And it's a spot where you can go through and actually say, okay, well, what would my licensing experience be like in terms of negotiations, timelines, and what are kind of the preferred or basic or rather maybe standard terms that I could expect. So I don't want to read bullet points, so I'm just going to leave them here. But then this presentation is recorded and the slides will be posted on the innovation.ucsd.edu/AIM website. Ken, is there anything you'd like to specifically add or highlight when it comes to licensing?
I think this does a good job of covering it. I think startups, there's two things I think they're often surprised by, which is sort of your first bullet point here, that UC is always going to require that the past patent costs be reimbursed, up to the date, and then also that going forward, the licensee pays for patent costs, and oftentimes the licensee will be paying for their own patent attorneys and the UCSD patent attorneys. Now those patent attorneys will hopefully work together to decrease the overall cost as necessary. One or the other typically takes the lead, but those are the two things that typically surprise startup companies.
So a note there too that through I guess UCSD has relationships with numerous law firms, and specifically our relationship with Mintz, that there is a set of office hours where if you have questions about IP strategy, about the process, about licensing, that you can schedule time with a number of members from Mintz. And so that's actually something, I think, as a follow-up to this webinar, I'll send out those details, but where and how you can schedule those office hours, because it is a great way to connect and learn something about your potential future as an entrepreneur scientist, but then also to be in the know. So
Yep. And as always, Shane, I appreciate you picking up the tab on the billing rates there.
Oh, I mean, we do well enough. That's the benefits are great. Public institutions are well known for great benefits. Maybe not the most competitive pay, but it goes to a good cause. So that's there. And then just to highlight additional resources from campus, as everybody was on early on, Raksha Shah joined. She's one of our EIRs, which is Entrepreneur in Residence. They're sourced out of the Office of Innovation and Commercialization. So it's a program that our office supports. We coordinate their connections and curate their experience with campus. However, this map at, I don't know the URL by heart, but if you go to bling.ucsd.edu and look for Ideas Council, we've done the hard work of coordinating and mapping the different resources on campus. These are accelerators, incubators, design support facilities, and maybe it's a certificate or some kind of educational opportunity. And so this isn't live, it's a screenshot, I'm sorry. But if I were to click on one of those little rocket ships, it would pull up the program website, a short description, and then there's also a tab, I think at the top, where you can filter by on-campus or off-campus and regional supports. I think the rocket ships might turn to orange. So that's how you know if you're on the campus or external partner view. As a note then, and to promote, Ideas Council has an open campus meeting on October 6th. That will be at 1 p.m. And so details about that will be posted on the Ideas Council link page and likely a bunch of other places that you may come across if you check email or ever go to ucsd.edu. Lastly, I think this might be the last before open questions. This is the timeline that we're looking at. It's ambitious, as always. So the deadline is on the 30th. We have an internal review, which includes review, question, ranking, answers, and insights from our licensing team and from some faculty from across the university. So that includes people in health, Rady School of Management. So if there's questions about our business plan, marketability, commercialization potential, that's stuff that we include, that then we distill down all the applications that we get. Maybe we'll get more than your research grants, Ravi, maybe, I don't know. Shoot for the moon. But then we have industry panels scheduled already for October 18th from 10 a.m. to noon, and then October 19th from 9 to 11. So that's something for every submitting program or team. Make sure that those are open times. It's coordinating with people across the United States, and so that's the time we get. So make sure that if you've got clinicals or you're traveling, at least get someone from your team that's going to be able to run through a set of 5 to 6 slides that can speak to a lot of the things that we discussed previously in this webinar. Awards then would be announced November 1st. We all celebrate. And then spending happens then, like I mentioned, up until the end of fiscal year, which would be June 31st, 2022. There are potential this year with extensions as spending goes, and supply chain, I think I've heard, has been really tough with certain reagents. And so things happen, especially nowadays. So that is the timeline. Here's the obligatory contact us information about our office. But at the same time, as I've got this up, I want to open it up for questions from all attendees. So I think start to throw them into the Q&A, because I don't think I can hear anybody ask questions. So give it a few minutes for people to get those typed out, spell check. Yeah, otherwise we are remarkably on time. And as a note, there were 2 questions earlier. One that Raksha had, I think, spoken to very concisely, and it was about asking for an amount of money over the award allocation. said as a reminder, it's best, and what we want to see is what can you achieve within the grant kind of bracket there between 10 and 50 grand. What would you do specifically, and how would that help you in terms of reaching a milestone or inflection point? The other, Ravi, you spoke to this, was how advanced does an invention need to be? It can be as early as can be. And so there aren't any hard requirements for prototype or anything that would disqualify you. Again, and as I think everybody said, it's about relationships and the capacity, and I guess maybe in some cases talent for networking and making a compelling case for what you're working on. Rachel, I see there might be another question that's popped in, but
Looks like that question was actually just if we'll have access to the recording. Will be added to our YouTube page that I'll drop in the chat as well. And then I think we do have another question from attendee. If we have a multi-institutional, I think, team, do we need to have the multi-institutional agreement completed before application?
Oh, I can feel that. I think it's from a patent law perspective, you don't have to have that agreement in place, but I think certainly the preference is for the interinstitutional agreement to be worked out prior to filing. It really comes down to sort of the specific UCSD campus policy as to whether they want to file on that in the absence of an IIA. But I will say from a patent law perspective, the patent office doesn't care whether there's an IIA in place. But for practical reasons, I think UCSD will typically want to have that in place prior to filing.
And if there are any questions that do come up, you can email any of the folks here. My email is my first initial S and then my last name at ucsd.edu. There's also an AIM grant at ucsd.edu, which I check regularly, and also folks from our office have access to. So I think I'll invite any closing thoughts from our panelists, and then we may bid everyone good afternoon and adieu.
Looks like there is one more question from Dr. Liu. If we ask for more on the budget, but not all of it was seen as fundable by this mechanism, will you guys decrease the approved budget automatically to approve?
Okay, I'll repeat the question. So I think I've got it. So if you ask for 80,000, because that's how much you need to reach the milestone that you've identified, would we then make a determination to just fund it for 50 of that 80? I think that's what the question is. Not all of it was, or okay, or if we'd only, I think, be as specific as you can. And even if it's to say, I could achieve this, and what I would love to achieve is this with 85,000 or 150. However, 50,000 would get me to this point. So making very clear what the parameters of the grant will help you achieve. Because I think if you put in a request for a larger amount, it becomes a bit fuzzy in terms of, okay, well then what portion of that milestone are they going to achieve with 50? So I think, would you agree, Ravi? Okay. And yeah, Justin, maybe. I think when it comes down to this, project plans and budgets are typically to the dollar. So knowing where and how money is going to be used is really important.
Yeah, Shana, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think really the key is, hey, for your ultimate milestone, it may be 150K, but if you're asking for 50, what can you achieve with that 50,000, even if it is not, the complete be all end all goal that you're going for? Please specify what you're hoping to achieve with funding that falls within this AIM mechanism.
I think, and to add, and if I can get some backup here, if we see things, or typically I've seen things when it comes to personnel, or sorry, Ken, but using the grant to pay for legal fees. The spirit of the grant is more to advance science. And so the idea then is there, by backing the science, you're going to come up with something that's commercializable, is going to be licensable, and therefore then going to, that still be the money that you're using to pay things like operations and legal. And so I think putting science as a primary thing that you're allocating budget to is key. But there is a compelling case to be made for spending money on anything related to getting your technology to market. So it doesn't disqualify anybody at any point to spend on those things. So yeah, do you ever agree? Yeah, I mean, that's the feedback I've gotten in the past. So
I agree that science is more important than the patent attorneys.
okay, thank you. Nice. Let's see, and then there's another question. Once the provisional is filed, is there a need for CDA to discuss outside of the university, or is it best to wait until the patent is published?
So the provisional is still confidential, and the fact that it's filed is even confidential. Once you file a provisional application, you can withdraw that application. It never sees the light of day. So, if you want to discuss it, or with a potential investor, or show it to a potential investor, that can typically be arranged. But that needs to go through OIC and make sure that we have you have the proper approvals.
Well, I will say then I like to end early when I can, and I'll take 2 minutes. I think we had this scheduled until 2:15 just in case as a buffer, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time and make sure I say thank you so much to Justin, Ken, and Ravi for joining us today. That the perspective and the value add was immense, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I've really enjoyed my association with UCSD over the last 4 years. So Paul, Shane, Deborah, Rachel, you guys have been really awesome. So we continue to work together, and I'm sure we'll uncover more new ideas. So maybe Justin will drop in a few $100 million more into the kitty. So
Thanks, Ravi.
so thank you. Thank you.
I agree. Shane, thank you for putting this together. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Looking forward to the AIM process as usual.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoyed it.